Start with the land acknowledgement, and then I'm going to transition over to Diane. So the Mukilteo School District acknowledges that we gather on the ancestral homelands of the Coast Salish peoples who have lived in the Salish Sea Basin since time immemorial. We respect this place and honor the sacred spiritual connection to the land, water, and its people, past, present, and future. By acknowledging these lands and their original indigenous inhabitants, we reach back to our own indigenous roots and reflect on the impacts of colonialism and the lands from which all our people come. We are connected to our ancestors through this connection to land, for the land is what connects us all. Please join me in expressing our deepest respect and gratitude to the traditional people of this territory, the Snohomish and Tulalip tribes, for their enduring care and protection of the land in which we currently share. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Diane.
Thank you. Thanks very much, Dr. Brynildson, and thanks for those in attendance tonight and your patience as we got started a little late. So we're going to share just a little bit of information with you and just some background information that might be helpful to understand about funding for public schools. Can be kind of complicated, but one thing that is helpful to know, as you can see on the slide, about 77% of public school funding comes from the state, right? That's collected from state through taxpayer collection through the state, and then is doled out to public school districts. About 15% comes from local funding, like the levies that are on the February 8th ballot. And then about 8% comes from the federal government, and that often is earmarked for certain programs or certain services, and is one piece of our overall funding. So as you can see, the levies, they help pay for things that are outside of what's considered basic education, things that aren't covered by the state dollars that public schools receive. So school districts, as you've seen, can place levy proposals on the ballot and ask voters to consider collecting a specific amount of money from local property taxes. And that is for a set time period. And you'll hear more about that in a few minutes. Usually it's 4 or 6 years for some capital levies. And it takes 50% plus 1 vote, so a simple majority for that proposal to pass. And an easy way to remember the difference between levies and bonds is that levies are for learning, meaning they're more for instructional things, smaller projects, things that happen inside the classroom, whereas bonds are for building. So those are the bigger projects: building a new school, building an addition, a major renovation, a new heating and ventilation system, something that takes more money upfront in order to fund that project. And I was going to show just a very brief video. It's about 2 minutes, but it does a great job explaining the difference between bonds and levies. So I'm going to go ahead and hit play. Make sure you can hear this, hopefully.
Money for school programs and buildings doesn't grow on trees. Much like a seed, it starts as an investment, which grows into the structures and services communities rely on. These seeds of funding beyond the money that the state provides are referred to as local levies and bonds. So what is the difference between a levy and a bond? A simple way to remember the difference is that levies are for learning and bonds are for building. Bonds only pay for capital projects such as new construction or modernization of older buildings. Much like an old-growth forest, bonds financing stretches over long periods of time, usually 20 years. Bonds are sold to investors who are repaid with interest over time from property tax collections. A levy is a property tax that collects an approved dollar amount over a much shorter 2 to 6 year span and comes in several garden varieties. Levies allow districts to provide more services than the state's basic education funding allows. Levies grow things like teachers for smaller classes, counselors or nurses, student activities and sports, or preschool programs. Levies may also sprout improvements such as technology, building security, and minor renovation projects, or pay for new buses. Districts can also ask voters to approve a replacement levy, meaning they are renewing an expiring levy so the same services can continue to thrive. Another key difference between bonds and levies is how they are approved. While levies only require a simple majority to pass, bonds require a supermajority. Whether it is a levy or a bond, your district will outline exactly what the ballot measure would pay for and what the estimated tax impact would be if approved. You can obtain this information from your local school district office. With local support, your school district can provide the education kids need to grow and thrive.
Well, thanks for watching that. They make it look a lot more fun than I can look at. I just want to make sure to my panelists, are you able to see my screen back to the PowerPoint again, showing the right
Yes.
thing? Okay,
Yes.
super. I'm checking everything now tonight. All right, so a couple of key points as we get into more details here, but I want you to remember a few things. One is that we have two upcoming ballot measures that are replacements to expiring levies. February 8th is the last day to vote or return your ballot. And as you probably know, we are very fortunate that all of our elections can be done by mail in Snohomish County. It doesn't even require a stamp anymore. So it can go into a ballot box in our community, or you can pop it in the mail, even without a stamp. So they've made it much easier for us to get those ballots returned. And now I'm going to hand the mic over here to Brooke Trissler.
Good evening, everybody. My name's Brooke. As Diane and Allison mentioned, I work in technology, and I'm here tonight to share with you the two different levies that we have that will be on the ballot this election. The first one is a replacement of an education programs levy. This levy provides money for programs and services that are not funded by the state. We currently have a 4-year levy that expires at the end of this calendar year, 2022. And this proposition, if voted, will renew that funding of the replacement levy to begin in 2023 and run through 2026. So it'll be a 4-year levy. Some things that are paid for out of that levy would be athletics and extracurricular programs, elementary instrumental music programs, extended day lessons for students, pay for substitutes, new curriculum, and services for students receiving specialized supports. On this next slide we'll see a breakdown in 3 different columns. You see the collection year on the left, and then you see the estimated levy rate per $1,000 of assessed value for Mukilteo School District residents. And that varies between $1.76 and $1.86. And then you can see the estimated collection amount that we can't go over on the right there. The second measure that will be on the ballot is the replacement of the capital projects levy. And this levy provides money for facilities and technology needs that a bond or the state does not fund. So we currently have a capital projects levy that is due again to expire at the end of this calendar year, 2022. So the ballot asks voters to renew this funding, just like the educational levy. And it will run for 6 years from 2023 to 2028. Some examples of that within technology. The majority of what we do with technology is funded through this levy, from providing computers for staff and students to also providing classroom presentation equipments like our interactive panels in the classrooms, document cameras, and things like that. Funds will also be used for essential facility needs to ensure we have ongoing operations and learning environments are safe. Things like upgrading and replacing security cameras that are at the end of their life, and then also essential building systems and components like heating, ventilation, and air conditioning, electrical, plumbing, and fire panels. A breakdown of those levies in a similar format to the educational levy. You see the collection years on the left. You see the estimated levy rate per $1,000 of assessed value in the middle, from 61 cents down to 55 cents. and then the levy amount of 15 million, which we won't go over. And I'm going to hand it over to Patty Dowd, who is our Executive Director of Business Services.
All right, thanks, Brooke. Good evening. Thanks for joining us. I'm going to talk a little bit about hasn't the state invested more money into our public education? We probably all have heard of the McCleary case ruling, and I'm going to just talk a little bit about that. So the McCleary case ruling required the state to fully fund basic education. While the state's made great strides in fully funding education, it's still not paying the full cost of meeting the educational needs of our students. This proposition that we are putting before voters would just ask voters to continue to support our educational program levy and capital projects levy. One additional item I want to share with you is due to the pandemic, we did get some additional ESSER dollars through the federal government. Those ESSER dollars are tied to COVID-related items, such as providing additional social and emotional supports to our students, the increased cost of keeping our buildings safe and cleaning, as well as additional PPE, so personal protection to keep people safe and healthy, as well as providing us dollars to help with learning loss. So those dollars, again, are only one-time funds. So we will get those from the federal government, but they will go away, so they will not continue. So what our propositions would do is would continue and provide us with a continued stable flow of revenue. Again, people often want to see how the property tax is going to affect them. What am I currently paying and what might I pay? So on the left here, you can see for 2021, you would pay an estimated $3.06 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. We estimate the cost in 2023 to be $3.28 per $1,000 of assessed valuation. What this takes into account is all the shares of Mukilteo's property tax. So you can see the two existing levies, both the educational program levy and the capital levy, and then the replacement. But what our taxpayers did vote yes for a couple of years ago, which we are super happy and appreciative for, is the bond. So we continue to owe money on that bond. So that is on that chart as well. You do know that you pay property taxes. The state also collects a property tax, but we're talking tonight about the portion that Mukilteo School District can have and own and be able to predict. This chart is just a brief explanation on how you calculate your property taxes. So example, a house valued at $600,000 with a tax rate of $3.28 would be $1,968 a year, or $164 per month. This is for our visual learners. This is just a chart showing how they are layered on top for the total tax rate. So as you can see, the darker component is the educational program levy. On top of that is the capital levy and then the bond. And those are the three, again, that the Mukilteo School District would be collecting from taxpayers. This chart is just a comparison of where our district stands compared to other districts for a tax rate. What's important to note is both Arlington and Monroe don't have, one of them doesn't have a bond and the other doesn't have a capital levy. So we're not really looking at apples to apples. And also an interesting thing with Seattle School District is they collect a smaller dollar per thousand tax rate because they also get support from their city. So their city is able to collect taxes that directly flow to the school district. We don't have that here in Mukilteo.
Thanks, Patty. So a couple of key dates. As Dr. Brinnels has said, you probably have already received your ballot, both the information in there as well as the ballot to fill out and return. And again, February 8th is the last day to do that. There are all kinds of community boxes that you can find around your county on the county website if you want locations, but you can also, again, pop it in the mail. Doesn't even need a stamp. Just make sure you get it in the mail before February 8th. So a couple of last reminders is again, that these are renewing existing levies. So they're replacing ones that are expiring. They're not new or additional ones. Also that they are going, if they are approved, they would help provide funding for existing programs and services. Again, about 15% of the school district budget is from local funding like levies. They need at least 50% in order to pass. February 8th is the last date. And we always take every opportunity to remind people that we are hiring. So just one extra little reminder that if you or somebody you know is interested in working for a great school district, we have both we're hiring in almost every position. And if you are not sure, you might consider being a substitute. And that way you can decide when you work and when you don't. So this next section, we're going to have a chance to gather your questions and thoughts about the levy, and then we'll answer them as many as we have time to do. So I am going to just stop my screen share for a second here and pop up our thought exchange. And give me just a second. All right. Colleagues, are you seeing the thought exchange? Fantastic. All right, I put the timer here at 5 minutes, and if we still need more time, I can add more time. We'll see how the questions go. You can join by going to a website. You can scan this QR code with your phone. You can, I'll get the link here and I'll put it in the chat box here. You can just click on that link in the chat and that'll take you to our thought exchange. And the question is just really simple. What questions or thoughts do you have about the proposed levy? And as you begin to write your answers, you can write as many or as few questions or thoughts as you'd like. And then you'll have an option to rate other people's thoughts or other people's questions. So if you really agree with somebody else's question, you give it more stars and that'll kind of bump it up to the top. That helps us prioritize how we answer these questions. So I'm going to play some quiet music here, give you a few minutes of time to think and write down any questions that you have.
Diane, I don't know if, oh.
So I'm going to pause that music again. I'm going to put the link in one more time. So far, we just have one question. So this is going to be a pretty quick answer, quick and easy answer, I think. But I'm going to put that link in and just encourage people one last time. We'll give it one more minute in case you have any questions out there. And of course, you can always follow up with us afterwards if you think of questions after the fact. So last minute here, and then we'll answer. All right, we're winding down. Okay, I promised if we do this again, I'm going to find better music. I was trying to find some copyright-free music because since we're recording this and going to put it on our website, you have to be thoughtful about that kind of thing. All right, we did get a few questions in here, so we'll go ahead and answer these to the best of our ability. So I'm going to start with this first one, and we may all either take turns or chime in to answer these. And so the first one here is, if we keep passing levies like this, does that encourage the state not to fully fund public education? Some think if we don't pay, the state will. I'm going to ask Patty if you have anything you want to start off with, or if you would like me to take a crack at it first.
Yeah, so I'll start off, and then if you want to add some. So that's a great question. And we really encourage legislators and our constituents to fully fund basic education. But as we know, if we continue to wait for them to fully fund us, we would not be able to provide the supports that we currently are able to provide for our students. So while that's a great goal to strive to, we're not there yet. And if we waited for that, because we have been waiting for that, we wouldn't have stable funding.
Thank you, Patty. And I guess I would just underscore that there's no guarantee, right? So it would be at great risk to try to change something without that funding from the state being ready or in some ways committed to being able to help support public school districts. Yeah. The next question is, these two levies are vital to student success. Please vote yes for Mukilteo kids. Your vote makes a difference. That's less of a question, more of a comment. We appreciate it. There are things, by the way, this might be, since we have a moment and we have, I think, plenty of time, the school district can inform our constituents. We can share with the public and our families, right, the facts about a levy or a bond, but we're very highly regulated about what we can say and share in an election. So for instance, the school district cannot say, tell people how to vote. However, there are citizen groups out in the community that can. So you might see or hear things on social media from our citizens team that can promote election and do and say things that the school district cannot during an election. So I just thought I would make that clear. Some people don't realize that, and they say, why didn't you promote this more? And the truth is that school districts are prohibited from telling people how to vote, or even we can remind people to vote, but not which way. This seems like a big ask during COVID. This is a lot of money, again, for the district to ask. That is true during COVID, and it's something I think that all of us are very, very aware of. And I'm going to ask my colleagues, do you have anything that you'd want to add other than, I know that we do our best to be very very efficient with the dollars that we do have, and really put them to good use. But
Yeah, I could add just a piece to that. I think with Dr. Brynelson and our board of directors, they have been adamant about keeping a stable tax rate for our residents. So we have always strived to be within the $3.50 to 60 to 70 cents so that we could try to keep that as stable as possible. And while it looks like a big number, the cost really to educate and keep things running is a big number. And it also provides stable funding. So it's, and the district has done a great job just really trying to create a stable environment and programs to keep running. So it is really vital to keep renewing those levies.
And I was just going to add too, in case this was new information for anybody attending tonight, keep in mind that our school district is roughly 15,000 students, a couple thousand employees, and the programs and services that are offered, you got to think scale. So those numbers are, I realize they can be a little bit of sticker shock, but we're not talking one school, right? We're talking many schools. We're talking thousands of students. And so to really be able to serve and provide those programs, it is a big, it does look big because it's serving a lot of people. What are the maximum amount of money that each levy can collect, and how does the increase in property values affect this? Patty, this seems like it's in your wheelhouse again. And if you like, you want me to go back to the PowerPoint and show it real quick?
Yeah, could you say the question again? I can't see the questions on my screen.
Oh, yeah, sure. The question is, what are the maximum amounts of money that each levy can collect? And how does the increase in property values affect this? So the first one, I think we have answered in the slide. I'll show that. And then the second part is, how does the increase in property values affect this?
So I'm going to start with the second piece first. So how does the increase affect us? So when you are living in an area that has industry in it, so for instance, we have Boeing is a big industry, so they help with our tax rate. So for districts that are in an area where industry might not be, or it's rural, they rely on their taxpayers to bear more of the burden. And as everybody's assessed rate goes up, typically, we know that, right? We've seen that. And so as there's more more people to tax, the cost gets spread out.
And then I don't know if you can see, Patty, I'm sharing again from the slideshow. This is the replacement of education programs levy. So this is showing the estimated tax rate per $1,000 of assessed value, but on the right, it shows the total amount across all taxpayers in our district. So that's the total amount each year. And then
so we could never collect more than what's on the right side. However, there are some equations that go into that, such as what is our student population? So if our student population grew by 700 kids or 10,000 kids, we couldn't increase our ask anymore from the taxpayers any more than what is seen on that ballot.
Thank you. Yeah, that's a great question. I do get that question sometimes. Sometimes people think, well, if my house is worth more and I pay more, that means the district is collecting more. And that is not true, correct?
Yeah, so we're, whatever we put the dollar amount on the right side of the ballot is the maximum we could ever collect. So while we're going out for the enrichment levy is a 4-year levy, we have to look in our crystal ball a little bit and make some assumptions about our student growth. And so while we do that very cautiously, because if we exploded and we got 10,000 kids, we know we would still have to work within that set dollar amount we asked our taxpayers.
Thanks for clarifying that. And then just to show another visual, since the person asked, here is the replacement of capital projects levy proposal. And so you can see on the far right, the total amount that we could collect would be, it's $15 million per year for 6 years. Yeah. Okay, back to the thought exchange. Thank you. Are you, I think I need to share that again.
Yes, we still see the PowerPoint.
Okay. Boy, that didn't work either, did it? I'm just going to close it now. How about now? Back to thought exchange. Okay.
Perfect.
All right. All right, we got that one. Why should community members who don't have students enrolled in the district support these levies? When I talk to my neighbors who don't have kids, they often complain of taxes going up. So this is one of my, we'll say one of my favorite questions. So there's a couple of things to keep in mind first. So for one, if you think about public schools, not only educating all students, right? That's part of our service, is that we educate all students in our community, many of whom stay here. They stay here, they live here, they might start a family here, they may work here. So this is an investment in our community, in an educated, positive community investment. So also because that to me is worth something, right? Having those people who come through and then also stay, there's some value to having students who are educated, engaged in our community, and that stay here. There's a certain sense of ownership, I think, that comes with that too. My other point is that when you think about public education, you know, who helped fund that? Back when we were all recipients, probably to some degree, of either public education or some education as we grew up, and how was that funded? And same thing with the future generations. You know, how will that be funded? So I look at it as a community piece to this, and less of a, if I don't have a student, why should I pay? So that's my piece I wanted to add, but I'm looking to my colleagues to see if you want to add anything to that.
I think it's also a good point to note is the real estate, right? People want to move to Mukilteo because of the schools. So while you're also investing in the schools, you're also investing in your real estate.
Yeah, and that comes to sometimes real dollar value in people's property values, and having a good community where people want to move to, it really helps all of us, right? And then the last question I have here is, you mentioned that the dollar amounts are maximums. Does the tax rate go down if you hit those maximums? That's another one for you, Patty.
Yeah. So the tax rates actually can fluctuate a little bit. So as it said on the slide, they're an estimate because we don't know what the assessed value will be beyond today, right? So we're making some assumptions when we're estimating those tax dollar per thousand. What I can tell you is we're very conservative in our assumptions, so that we don't overpromise. So in most cases, these are the worst case scenario of your dollar per thousand. And if the assessed valuation grows more than we estimated, the dollar per thousand would go down.
Thank you. Well, that's all the questions that we had. I know we had a smaller group tonight, but I appreciate your time and I appreciate your interest in wanting to learn more about these levies. And I would invite you, if you think of other questions or you talk with a neighbor and they have questions and you're not sure of the answer, please feel free to contact us. In fact, I can put my email in the chat, and I invite you to reach out, and we'll do our best to answer your question. And I will give it over to Dr. Brynelson for any closing remarks.
I think you said it perfectly, Diane. Again, thank you for your time and your interest. And again, so sorry for our technology issues and that we weren't able to get the interpreters into their rooms so we could have this presentation in multiple languages. But as Diane said, we will follow up with, I think you said written materials, Diane?
Yeah, we'll do written materials. And I will say the information is also on the website, which has a translator built in too, but we'll make it available for families and community.
All right. Thank you so much for your support and time. Have a great night and remember to vote. Take care, everybody.
Thank you. Bye-bye.